Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting in about a minute. Give people a bit of time to log in. All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar focused on workload migration for the Canadian government. My name is Bob Koblowski, and I'm an account executive here at ThinkOn. I want to get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way before we get started. We are recording this webinar, and we'll include a link to view it on demand, in addition to a copy of this presentation, which you're free to share with your colleagues. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them into the Q&A or the chat. And between James and I, we'll get them answered for you as quickly as possible. There will be time for Q&A at the end of this session. If you prefer to go off mic to ask your questions. For those of you who are new to ThinkOn, we are a proudly Canadian-owned and operated cloud solution provider with a global data center footprint and have recently been appointed as the only VMware sovereign cloud partner in Canada. As the only Canadian CSP on the PBMM framework, we are certified to manage, process, and store protected B workloads, and the only CSP capable of offering data sovereignty to the Government of Canada. You can consider us to be your dedicated department of data-obsessed experts, protecting your data like it's our own, making it more resilient, secure, actionable, and searchable. We work with a trusted ecosystem of top technology partners to provide cost-effective infrastructure as a service solution and data management services with transparent pricing. For example, we don't charge ingress or egress fees. And now to our discussions about workload migration. Workload migration is the act of moving a workload, typically a program or a service, from one infrastructure environment to another. For example, from on-premise data center to the public cloud, from one cloud provider to another, or from cloud back to on-prem. Cloud migration provides the opportunity for you to benefit from a centralized environment and simplify data management of your data and better reliability and greater performance with fewer incidents. So what are the benefits of workload migration? There are many. I'm going to focus today on 5 key benefits that will likely resonate with most of you: cost savings, scalability, security, accessibility, and modernization. Substantial savings can be realized by migration of workloads to the cloud. You only pay for what you use. It's a consumption model. And you don't have to make any significant infrastructure purchases or upgrades. Cloud providers perform upgrades and updates to their infrastructure, and you gain the benefit. Deloitte found recently in a study that they did that organizations spend a considerable amount of their budgets, as much as 2/3 of their IT budget, on maintenance. These expenses are absorbed by the cloud service providers, and instead you pay a predictable monthly fee for your workloads. Also, many organizations find that they can reduce real estate expenditures, operating costs associated with power and cooling by migrating workloads to the cloud. Scalability and workload balancing is key. You don't need to build the infrastructure to meet the worst case scenario from a consumption and accessibility perspective. Cloud providers simplify the means to scale up and down based on changing demand and business factors as needed. Security is always a concern. Cloud providers can be more secure than on-premise infrastructure if organizations understand that there is a shared responsibility and both the provider and user must do their part. As government increasingly adopts zero trust security strategy, cloud workloads benefit from the most stringent physical security policies in practice today. For ThinkOn to become an approved CSP, for example, of the government, we underwent a highly detailed security assessment. We had to demonstrate that we were compliant with the stringent security practices government enforces to qualify under the federal framework agreement. And of course, the very nature of cloud workloads means that they can be accessed from anywhere. There is a secured network connection to the cloud. This anywhere, anytime, any device access is a key feature of digital transformation, and frankly, is kind of the brass ring that we've been chasing for a very long time. I remember having conversations about this in the 80s. Additional cloud-based backup or archives help speed up resources and can drive the recovery point objective, the RPO, or the recovery time objective, RTO, after a data loss or failure to near zero levels. And of course, organizations that wish to modernize their applications with microservices and APIs are by definition taking a cloud-native approach to development and deployment. Modern containerized applications are born, deployed, and enhanced in the cloud. There are many other reasons why organizations migrate to the to a cloud platform. And some of those include increasing business agility, eliminating end-of-life concerns, consolidating data centers, enabling digital transformation, and certainly accelerating growth. I think that I've taken up enough of your time now, so I'm going to pass this over to James, where he'll share his expertise and experience relating to workload migration. James, take it away.
Thanks for joining us today to talk about workload migration, or as our marketing team has dubbed it, point A to point cloud. A couple weeks ago, when I was invited to a meeting to talk about this webinar, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I expected I was being invited to another sales and marketing group to provide some thoughts and ideas on what would be presented during this session. During the meeting, one of the first questions that came up is who would be hosting, which resulted in a period of silence. After a brief time, I did what I always do, and I opened my mouth. I said, not me. You don't want me to present. I'm not a salesperson, and if you let me, I'm going to get down into the weeds. So here we are today with me presenting. I've always been interested in technology, which started out as a passion for gaming. Many years ago, my family owned a restaurant. We didn't have room on the boat we lived on to have a proper computer room. So I had to hijack one of the back storage rooms, built a desk, and started installing equipment. So there I sat between boxes of food and restaurant supplies, tweaking and modifying my 486 to run the current generation of games. I believe at one point I had upwards of a dozen boot profiles. I've always had a hard time explaining to people what it is I really do. I don't think it's because it's overly complicated or hard to understand, but more that it changes every single day. I clearly remember sitting with my son a number of years ago. He was about 4, and he asked me, "Daddy, what do you do?" Mommy works for the bank, so she deals with money, and that's useful. All you do is sit there at a computer. It took me a while to figure out exactly what it is I do. I did finally figure it out. I enable businesses and organizations to focus on core expertise by actively managing and taking care of their technology needs. There can be many benefits to migrating to the cloud or other service provider. It is important to understand fully what you're trying to accomplish and what business needs you are trying to achieve for your organization or department. I'm sure you've all been inundated with the sales reasons and standard answers for what moving to the cloud can do for you. But at the end of the day, you need to focus on what it does for your team, both the technical side and the end consumers of the services. If you're not improving the experience for the users, making their lives and day-to-day work better, then you'll experience additional roadblocks or resistance to the change. Over the past few years, we have seen some significant changes in the technical teams. And in a lot of cases, organizations have reduced the size and scope of these groups. It is critical to understand how the workload migration will impact your support infrastructure and back-end IT teams. If there's no tangible benefit and clearly visible benefit to these groups, you will encounter resistance, which could lead to roadblocks towards achieving the vision. In many cases, these challenges are a direct result of insufficient communication and engagement between the teams involved. So what's holding you back? A lot of organizations have a hard time making the first step towards moving services to a cloud provider. The reason for this can be as varied as the organizations out there. I've tried to highlight a few major ones I have seen over the years. My primary response to all these arguments or reasons is you need to engage with the experts. I've never encountered a situation where we were not able to resolve the situation or find a solution. As always, this feeds back into the why. Ensure that you are bringing all the stakeholders to the table, listen and understand their concerns or reservations, then find solutions to the items that they are bringing forward. This shouldn't be a sales pitch. It needs to be an open and clear conversation that leads towards resolving the stakeholder concerns and illustrating to them the benefits they and their departments will realize after a successful migration. So the impact on the end users. For me, this is one of the key components that gets left out far too often. I can't tell you how many times I've been heads down into the migration on a Friday night and been asked to send out communication to the end users, telling them everything will change on Monday. Although there will likely be changes felt throughout the organization during and after the migration, if done correctly, no group will feel it more or react more negatively than the end users. Seemingly simple things can lead to confusion, distrust, and a general sense of frustration. How users connect to the new infrastructure, changes to their credentials they use to log in, or worst case scenario, connectivity or performance issues that slow down their day-to-day activities will result in issues, rework, and overload your support team. Make sure you engage the end users as much as possible in the planning phases, right through to the test migrations, and ensure that everyone is aligned and in step. When selecting participants in the planning, design, testing phases of the systems, try to ensure that you are getting a good representation of skill levels across the team. In my experience, other than your end users and the finance team, no group can derail a cloud migration faster or more effectively than the internal IT and architecture team. I know I keep saying it, but you need to keep the entire team engaged throughout the process to ensure you have alignment, clear understanding of the end state, and most importantly, in this case, clear designation of the roles and responsibilities of all parties involved. If not involved in the assessment and planning phases, your IT and support teams may feel like they're just sitting waiting to get yet another problem dumped in their laps. If you engage them early and often, then they're part of the process and can help integrate and guide the new process related to support and maintenance of the systems in question. Make sure you give them reasons to be engaged. At the end of the day, even if you have contracted your provider to manage many aspects of your environment, they will remain the front line. They will be the supporters if they can realize the upside of the migration and truly see a positive impact on their day-to-day operations. Many times it is the security and compliance team that present the most resistance when we start talking about migrating to the cloud. Right from the start, you need to be clear on the classification of the data contained within the system that you're intending to move to the cloud. Establish clear requirements on the required controls related to security and data protection. Most often, this is driven by a specific certification need or, in some cases, legislated requirements. With all this in mind, engage the security teams from both sides to establish clear protocols and procedures, including who is responsible for each aspect of the service. Is it important that this is not left to the end or as an afterthought? Gaps and deficiencies in compliance requirements can lead to significant rework on both the logical design and the procedures and policies in place for managing the environment. Chances are your selected provider has a great deal of experience and available resources to assist with any compliance and regulatory needs you need to fulfill. Approach this as a team effort and leverage the experience and knowledge from all parties. Application and system monitoring is another aspect of system development that is frequently overlooked. When it comes to managing your environment and ensuring the users and stakeholders remain engaged, it is critical to have an appropriate system in place to not only monitor system uptime and accessibility, but also performance and reliability. Develop ways to actively monitor the system to provide active and reliable metrics that tie directly back to the success criteria of the project. Having these types of systems in place will help you measure the success of the workload migration, and if done correctly, allow you to proactively take action to resolve any issues that may arise. I know I sleep better knowing I'm not going to receive system down call at 3 a.m. to a drive or due to a drive being critically low on space. You have likely seen a dozen or more migration plans that have a ton of steps or phases as they try to account for every eventuality. I know I have. Each migration is different and has different requirements. The goal here is to keep it simple and always remember to iterate on each step. Establish a common language to ensure that as the teams are talking, they are all on the same page. Too often there's a disconnect between the teams as one group is talking about a specific requirement and the rest of the team is either just agreeing because they don't think it's relevant to them, or the interpretation of a requirement is not the same. I'll use disaster recovery here as an example. In one project I did a few years back, we talked a lot about disaster recovery. The conversation always resulted in, yeah, we can recover all your systems, no problem. We use XYZ to back up everything and recover your systems in less than 24 hours. At the end of the day, the team had not established a clear RPO, which resulted in some significant changes to the system resourcing, database clustering, provisioning to accommodate the required RPO of 4 hours. Keep the teams and stakeholders engaged at each step. This is the only way to ensure a successful move. The assessment phase. For me, it's critical at this point to work with the end users. I need to see how they use this and access the system, what their day-to-day activities look like as they work in the platform. It's not necessary to understand the full inner workings of the solution, but the more information the migration team has access to, the more successful the migration will be. Understanding the touch points the user has with the system is vital. How do they connect to the services? How they log in, with what credentials? With the proposed solution, is this going to change? Do they upload or download data from or into the platform? Ask questions and observe the users to ensure you are capturing all of the use cases so you can develop a plan and implement any changes to procedure that will require training or additional support overhead. It is important to avoid making assumptions at this point. I clearly recall a recent project where we planned to integrate with the client's current IDM or identity manager. The on-premise instance of the workloads was integrated directly to their Active Directory, but this was not going to be appropriate after moving to the cloud. The selected IDM was a SAML 2.0 system, and the workload vendor assured us we would have no issues integrating the identity provider as their solution was fully SAML 2.0 compliant. At the end of the day, it turns out that a specific SAML tag that was required to be set to a specific value for compliance reasons was hard-coded into the workload application and could not be modified. This resulted in significant rework on the entire project, not only from an architecture point of view, but directly into policy and procedure components. This is also where you need to establish a clear set of success criteria. If the plan is to just lift and shift, then you need to make sure you're not adding additional pain or overhead to the end users or technical support groups. Take this opportunity to evaluate current pain points and possible solutions. Maybe the application load is cyclical. Certain times of the month or year, everyone is accessing the platform and performance degrades. This is where your provider can help. System resources can be scaled up during peak period, then scaled back once the bulk of the work is done. As always, keep the entire team engaged. This is truly where we are starting to define the why we are moving to the cloud. So plan and design. This is the step in the process where you start to define how you're going to answer the why that you as a team agreed upon in the prior phases. During this exercise, you will of course be building out the logical systems, network and storage design that will deliver your workload from the cloud. Make sure you are planning for all aspects of the business requirements beyond simply delivery of the application or platform itself. Monitoring, alerting, and security systems need to be an integrated part of the logical design. Keep reliability and sustainability in mind at this point in the process. So many times I've seen teams put together a design that only meets the minimum requirements to deliver the application, but overlooks or defers key requirements like high availability or the impact backup and DR systems will have on overall performance. As you work with the technical experts in laying out logical design, be sure to keep security on the forefront. Too often, I see this as an afterthought, but things like network partitioning, clearly defined firewall policies should be part of your step-by-step plan that will be used in the build phase. If I see one more any firewall policy, I'll probably scream. It's too often taken as the path of least resistance and causes issues down the line. During the plan and design phase, it is equally important that you document your support, maintenance, monitoring, and DR processes. All of these items are critical to the success of the project and need to be given as much attention as the logical design. Without these in place, the project will ultimately suffer even if the migration goes off without a hitch. In the build phase, so many times this is where I got brought into the conversation. Customer X needs 3 Windows servers, a firewall, a Linux server, and 4 public IP addresses. When I first started out as an independent consultant, I would take on any job and did not ask the question why. I built quite a few environments based on the detailed work order stating we need X compute units and X gigabytes of T0 storage. Each Windows system will have X compute and X storage allocated. The firewall will consist of this, and the Linux system will have that. I would spend 3 days building the systems, then pass it off to the client and say, here you go. And invariably, they would come back to me and say, huh, that's not what I asked for. This is the make or break step, where you get to test the planning and learning you have done before. Building out the infrastructure and system is the easy part, but now you get to test the why. If at all possible, move a replica of your system into the new cloud-based instance and engage your users, your support resources, and your compliance team. Run through as many scenarios as you can. This is your opportunity to step back into the plan and design step to resolve any items that do not work or result in a response to the why question. This is where we can test all the plans and design that has been done in the prior steps. Migration, the fun part. If you've done all the prior steps properly and thoroughly, this part should be a mechanical process. Follow the steps and stick to the plan. There are a couple key items that come to mind for me when it comes to the migration itself. Make sure you have a rollback plan. Even if the design and planning phase was completed smoothly and the build and test portion went off without a hitch, things can still happen to derail the effort. One time I was in the middle of migrating a large set of user mailboxes when the power failed. Of course, this happened when the CEO's email was active in the queue and my phone started ringing within minutes. Ensure the key players and technical resources are on call and ready to respond. You may think you have everything in hand, but if there's a sudden issue with networking or storage, you can't be left scrambling to find a phone number for the storage team. Over-communicate through the entire process. This holds true in all steps of the cloud migration, but nowhere more important than during the migration itself. Make sure the stakeholders, users, and any impacted group is aware of your progress, any roadblocks, and steps taken to move the migration ahead. Ongoing support. Once you're live, your ongoing success is determined by the degree to which you provide the proper maintenance and monitoring strategies necessary to sustain a healthy cloud environment. As an organization, you will need to review updates and security patches at least monthly and provide application and software updates just as frequently to incorporate the changes. In addition to performance monitoring, load testing, and application level testing are crucial to ensure your cloud environment and all the associated tools for business provide the best possible experience for your users. Many organizations choose to utilize a managed service provider to ensure continuous maintenance and monitoring. If your organization does not have a dedicated migration team or the IT staff necessary to handle analytics, testing, and more, you would benefit from seeking outside support. As we've been discussing, these are what we view as the critical steps to completing a successful migration. Don't skip a step, and don't be afraid to go back and repeat a step, either partially or in its entirety. Just because you have moved a similar application before does not mean you have all the answers. Likely you can borrow components or have lessons learned from the previous project but I can pretty much guarantee you will find different technical or why questions that can only be addressed by working through all the steps completely. Stay focused on the why. This is the most important piece for me. There's a multitude of reasons why you're moving your workload from point A to point cloud. These could be financial reasons, aging out hardware, performance, accessibility, and scalability drivers, to name a few. Possibly it is due to a shift in your organization to focus on your core skills, and you are looking for outside expertise to manage and support your technical assets. It is important throughout the entire migration project to focus on why you are moving your workload. It is by keeping this focus that you will achieve success during and after the migration. If you're interested in learning how ThinkOn can help you strategize and implement a workload migration strategy with our secure, private, and hybrid cloud solutions for public sector organizations, visit thinkon.com or get in touch with our sales team. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Bob and I today. All I can do is share my experience with you, and I hope some of what I had to say resonates or gives you something to think about. I've been asked a lot of times to provide a template for what a cloud migration needs to look like. And every time I am asked, I balk and am hesitant to provide an answer. Every migration is different and presents its challenges and requirements. But if you find the right partner and work together as a team, any problem can be overcome.
Thanks, James.
Now, go ahead, Bob. I'll let you jump
sorry,
back.
I didn't realize. I thought you were done. Go ahead. No, finish off.
Oh, I was just going to say, now we'll open up questions. Feel free to post them in the chat or Q&A box, or take yourself off mute and ask away.
You did such a good job. No questions. All right, well, if there aren't any questions at this stage, I think we'll give you back a bit of your time. I want to thank everyone today for participating in this webinar. All of you will be receiving a link to this and some additional documentation that we'll provide as well. And as James said, if we can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, everyone.